our Doug Richards. Hello, Doug.
Oh, hey.
The one and only. Here you are.
I was wondering who you were going to toss
It's
to.
the one and only Doug Richards.
So
Always a treat to have you in here. We've got a lot swirling right now when it comes to this runoff. There are the big headline-grabbing races, and then there are also some down-ballot races that you've been paying attention to as well. So I'm just going to give the floor to you, and you take us and everyone who's watching where you think we need to go to get a good grasp on this really interesting political day and week and kind of year we've been in.
Yes. Well, I'm constantly pitching stories about the riveting lieutenant governor's runoffs. Haven't been able to quite get those stories on air yet, but we're working on them.
We've had them in here. We've had many of the candidates for lieutenant governor ahead of the primary. We spoke with many of them in here. So 11 Live Streaming Center is the place to go.
I mean, they definitely are interesting in a very nerdy sense. But the sort of the more accessible one, I think, at least in Metro Atlanta, is the one for Fulton County Commission chairman, where Rob Pitts and Mo Ivory are in a runoff right now after Ivory beat Pitts in the initial election.
Pitts being the current chairman,
yes.
is an incumbent trying to hang on to his seat. Mo Ivory was a Fulton County commissioner until very recently, trying to take over that top job on the commission.
Yeah. Do you know who was president when Rob Pitts first got elected to office in Atlanta?
That I don't know.
It was Jimmy Carter.
So it's been a minute. And Rob Pitts has had a long career in Atlanta politics.
Has had a long career. He was on the Atlanta City Council for like a couple of decades, and he ran for mayor against Shirley Franklin in the early 2000s and lost. Ended up back on the Fulton County Commission again, and then and basically he's been there almost nonstop. He's had some little hiccups, but he's and now he's 84 and running for re-election. And we actually talked to him today, and he is, I mean, I've known the guy for a while, and he looks and sounds darn good for an 84-year-old man, darn good for a guy my age, So he's, and yet there are youngsters who, aspire to, and by youngsters, I'm talking about people in their 50s who want to see some new leadership, and Ivory is certainly one of them. And the disagreements between, they're both Democrats, and they, there are large streams of agreement, just broadly speaking, philosophically. Then you get into the weeds and you get into the personalities and you get into sort of skirmishes about, whose axe has been gored in stuff that most people don't pay attention to on the Fulton County Commission. And then that's kind of where the differences evolved. I'll shut up, but before I do, we talked to some voters today about sort of this generational shift that the Fulton County Commission seems to be on the brink of, at least deciding in this runoff election. And we talked with a woman named Doc Love, who was in favor of Mo Ivory. But before we talked to her, we talked to Nadim Ali, who is a Pitts supporter, and let's hear from them.
I felt very strongly about it. I felt Rob Pitts has been in place for a long time, and so I voted for experience.
Pitts has been on the ballot since like Jimmy Carter was president.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and Jimmy Carter was the first time I voted.
Were you tempted to change things up, given some of the problems that Fulton County has?
No, and I think he's in a good position to handle those because he has the experience. He knows where the bathroom is.
He's also a guy in his 80s and might need to use it.
Yeah, we have a president in his 80s.
We want to see good leadership. We want to make sure, it's like when people are playing on a team, like FIFA's going to be in town. Mm-hmm. There's a team, right? You want the best team to win. And sometimes some people need to be put on the bench and the newer people need to show forth their talents. So it's never a win or lose situation. It's all about what's going to make the team successful. And if sometimes stepping down to let the newer generation come, great. Sometimes they don't need to step down, but just mentor the next group coming in. Why can't we work together to make this thing work?
All right, you see a little bit of the shape of the different views on this race in those two vignettes there. And Doug, as you pointed out before we went to those interviews, Atlanta and Fulton County is a place dominated by Democrats. They're not, it's not a monolith, but it is, particularly in this race here, Democrat versus Democrat. A lot of the big issues there is a level of agreement on, but if you've gone to a Fulton County Commission meeting, there's plenty of disagreement that bubbles up there too. And there are big issues that split voters and split politicians in Fulton County. Big issues over what to do about the jail, particularly the Rice Street facility that has been controversy plagued for many, many years now. And also questions about elections, election procedure, the way elections are carried out here in Fulton County, particularly following President Donald Trump's criticism of them, the recent FBI raid that took place. Chairman Pitts and Commissioner Mo Ivory have both forcefully pushed back on any claims of misconduct here in Georgia. But those are big issues that the next leader of Fulton County are going to have to tackle. And if you want to see interviews with both of those candidates, our Jonathan Martin sat down with both Mo Ivory and Rob Pitts last week. Those interviews aired in full on the stream. They also aired on the Georgia Vote, and they tackle those big issues. Doug, they also took some shots at each other. It's become a contentious race here. I want to ask you this, because we started this segment by looking at the early voting numbers and that data from the Georgia Secretary of State's office. Many more Republicans have cast early ballots than Democrats. Not surprising, given that the big ticket races are kind of done at this stage for the Democrats. They know who their nominees are on the Republican side, Senate and governor. Those nominees still to be decided. So there's more juice, more excitement for many people on that side of the race. But how does that impact what's going on in this down ballot race here? If you're Chairman Pitts, if you're Commissioner Ivory, how does potentially lower early turnout on the Democratic side recalibrate their strategies?
Well, first of all, I think the data you're looking at is statewide, right?
Correct.
And Fulton County is the biggest Democratic county in the state, and this one race, I would bet your paycheck that
Why don't you bet your paycheck on that, Doug? Don't gamble my money.
that this race is driving a lot of the Democratic voters that you're seeing here, and they're not voting statewide; they're voting in Fulton County. And Fulton County, I mean, when I've been to Fulton County, I went to a couple of early voting sites today, and they were bumping. There were folks pulling up and leaving out, and
You think as much, though, to the level that we would see if the governorship, if the Senate nomination was also on the line in the Democratic primary here? I guess it may be hard to say for sure. You can't tease out a theoretical.
Well, it's hard to say, but local politics in Fulton County and the city of Atlanta is something that people do pay attention to and have kind of a personal connection to, probably even more so than they do maybe the big statewide races.
It's certainly more. I mean, it is local, right? But
Yeah.
and it's certainly closer to home. Doug, I want to be conscious of our time here, and I don't want to let you go without asking some questions about these other big races too. You've been traveling around, you've been talking to voters all around, some of whom have expressed a little bit of voter fatigue, I think is the phrase for it. Fatigue perhaps with political commercials and these runoffs, even zooming out beyond the Fulton County Commission chair race. When you look at the Republican Senate runoff, when you look at the Republican gubernatorial runoff, there's been a lot of money spent on ads. They have become quite contentious races in their own rights, and voters now having to go back to the polls again. They get to go back to the polls
Yeah.
again, but sometimes it can feel like have to go back.
Well, yeah.
What are they telling you?
Well, I went to a couple of Republican counties. I went to Bartow County and Cherokee County earlier this week, and those are heavily Republican counties, and the fatigue is among Republican voters who have seen all the money that the candidates for governor have been spending in the form of seemingly nonstop ads on TV, and in their complaining about not bitterly complaining, but all the piles of mail that they're getting in their mailboxes. You can turn off the TV, but you still got to go to your mailbox.
Well, they're going to find you. A lot of glossy mailers going out now. Is
Yeah.
it safe to say, Doug, is it safe to predict that turnout will be lower in the runoff than it was during the general primary?
It almost always is, yes. Although, I mean, and the thing is, I think the advertising has the effect of not only invigorating voters, but also having voters throw up their hands and say, to hell with it.
Yeah.
There's not that much of a difference between these two guys.
And they would say, I'm sure the candidates would say, whoa, that's not true. There's lots of difference. That's the job of a candidate. Sometimes in the eyes of the beholder, how much difference there is, and every voter is going to have their own thought on that. Doug, these races also on the Republican side for governor and for Senate have a little bit of a common thread between the two of them in that they pit somebody who is relatively new to running for elected office against somebody who has been in politics for some time. The governor's race, you see Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones, he's been in elected office for quite some time here in our state, versus Rick Jackson, who is a prolific donor here in state politics. But if you weren't in the weeds of Georgia politics, in the behind the scenes of it, many people didn't know who he was until he burst on the scene with a big splash and a really big pocketbook to back his campaign just a handful of months ago. And then on the Senate side, you see Mike Collins, a sitting U.S. congressman, whose father was also a U.S. congressman. And it's Derek Dooley, who was a football coach for the bulk of his professional career, never run for political office. How does that newcomer versus somebody who spent time in politics dynamic shade how voters are feeling about these two races?
It's weird. I'll tell you about the one strange conversation I had yesterday with a voter who said, yeah, I like Derek Dooley because he's a football coach. And I'm like, you mean like the X's and O's will translate? And he goes, well, no. There was another football coach who was elected to the U.S. Senate, and I really liked what he has done. And she was referring to Tommy Tuberville in Alabama, who has become a very conservative character in the U.S. Senate, and she was hoping that by voting for Derek Dooley, if he got elected, would turn into a guy like Tuberville. And people extrapolate stuff in ways that make sense to them.
For as much money is spent on focus groups and polling on behalf of all these campaigns, no doubt they've had lots of conversations like that too. And it really does come down to individual voters making an individual choice on a whole lot of data that's before them. And campaigns can never be quite sure what's going to stick and what isn't. And perhaps that is why they spend so much money trying to share their message. Before we let you go
it's
here.
kind of like ultimately comes down to a feeling.
To some people, for sure. Although, others may say they read everything, they parse all the information.
Yeah.
It's really a one by one kind of decision matrix. Doug, before we let you go, Election Day proper, June 16th. We're less than a week out now. We're going to have extensive coverage right here streaming on 11 Alive all night long as results are coming in. Doug, I want to ask you, and on behalf of everybody who is watching, what should people be paying attention to in these closing days that you think could be the defining theme of these races as we head into the home stretch here?
Zach, I wish I had a good answer for that question.
Well, maybe that is the answer, though, right? It's been such a topsy-turvy stretch of Georgia politics this year.
Well, I'm expecting more of the same, and the advertising is going to beat people down into throwing their hands up and say, okay, I'm going to vote for this person, or tell them to go to the beach and skip voting altogether.
We hope you don't do that one. I think it's a nonpartisan thing to say, though some people, do what you want. Getting to vote anywhere is a treat. It's a right we should not take lightly.
Yes.
And if you do it in Georgia, in particular, we say your vote matters everywhere. It does. But if you're in a closely divided political state like ours, your vote really, really can make a difference. So go out, make your voice heard, cast a ballot, and then tune in Tuesday night, because we're going to be right alongside you watching all those results roll in right here, streaming on 11 Alive, and pulling very much so off of the knowledge of our friend Doug Richards, who always got our back.
Well, and the special session of the legislature starts the next day.
Doug, I want you to know, I have a lot of just burning questions about that. You had a whole list of bullet points that we were to talk about here, so I didn't ask you about special session, but I'm not going to do it now.
Okay.
But perhaps we can bring you back tomorrow. and talk about it.
Let me check my schedule.
Well, your people can call me. I am my people. Doug Richards, always a treat. Thank you for being here.
Lovely to see you.